Welcome, everybody. I'm Mahabeli from the American University in Cairo, Center for Learning and Teaching, and we're hosting this workshop with Anna Mills. It's a collaboration between the Center for Learning and Teaching at the American University in Cairo and Equity Unbound, offering this workshop to the whole world and to our local faculty as well. And yeah, I'm not going to introduce Anna in a formal way. I'm just going to repeat what I said earlier, which is, Anna is one of those people who, from the very beginning of the launch of ChatGPT, has been, I think, helping everyone in the world, curating resources, helping people think about their teaching activities, and both, embracing that this is happening and still staying critical about it. And I've learned so much from her over the years and over the months, actually. Hasn't been a year yet, even. But I think everyone has been learning from her, so we're happy to host her today. And today she's going to talk about how teachers can harness AI in our work. Take it away,
Thank you
Anna.
very much, Maha. I'm very honored to be here and glad to be with you all. Feel free to keep sharing in the chat. I love seeing the greetings come in from around the world and a range of feelings about AI. I would say all feelings are welcome. And yeah, I do try to stay both critical and excited. I mean, those are my impulses. So I kind of welcome all those approaches to AI. And I think we've got the slides in the chat, and that's open for commenting. So what to expect? I wanted to start with just a couple of sort of ground rules for using AI text generators. Talk a little bit about how to get the most out of these systems. Just a little bit about prompting. And then explore some ways that teachers might use them in our workflow, and then some time to experiment and ask questions. Ooh, I think I switched the order. So I'm actually going to give the assorted uses, and then we'll have the time to experiment and ask questions and make some notes together in a collaborative document on how we're using it. So I wanted to sort of start with the hype. This is what we're confronted with from the New York Times. I think there's this kind of intense sense of possibility mixed with alarm. So this is, some quotes from a New York Times article that say that that working with AI is like collaborating with an alien, that everything is becoming much easier, that it feels like I've hired an intern. What used to take me half an hour takes 1 minute, and that it's enormous fun. So, that's how much of that is real is the question. Is it really that good? Certainly that's compelling. It's sort of seductive, but let's see, what is it really useful for, and how much can it help us? And what are the reasons to be skeptical of some of those claims? So some caveats and some ground rules. I'm going to go through disclosure, privacy, verification, and critique. So ground rule 1 would be disclosure. I think that anyone who's put out guidelines, so MLA and APA, have asked for disclosure, and that's generally what we ask our students in many cases. Policies vary, but if we would credit a human for similar assistance, then we should credit ChatGPT or whatever language model system we're using. And I just add a note to remember the humans who wrote the text that it was trained on as well. We don't have a good way to cite those humans at this point, but I keep referring back to the MLA guidelines on citing generative AI. And here's an example of citing it, because of course it gets complicated as we're moving into a time when people use AI in much more and more hybrid ways. So I used it in my textbook, my open educational resources textbook, How Arguments Work. I'm bringing in some phrases that students could use to critique AI outputs. And I went to ChatGPT and I'd already written a bunch of these and I said, are there any more? And it gave me a few more, and a few of those I thought were decent. And so what I did was I put a star next to the ones that came from the AI system. And I put an acknowledgement at the end following the MLA format with a link to the chat session. And then I had a workshop participant say, wait, why are you not quoting it? Because I wasn't at first. And I said, I probably should quote it. So I put in quotes the part that came from ChatGPT. And this is sort of an emerging practice, right? So I think we could discuss that more if you all have other ideas. But the idea is transparency, disclosure. It shouldn't be a secret. We want that openness with our students so that we can understand what they're learning, what part is them, what part is AI. So and we can also build practices to have that openness. Second ground rule is privacy. Think about privacy. Don't share sensitive or private information with ChatGPT, especially not student writing or data without permission or a process through our school's IT department that's looked at the legal and ethical concerns around that student writing and how it's being shared. So we may also want to look at the privacy policy of whatever system we're using and just recognize all the ways in which they could use whatever we feed them. And I'm not, see if I'm missing anything in the chat here. No. And Maha, feel free to interrupt me if I do miss something. A third ground rule is verification. So we've got to be able to check whatever we're getting from these systems. And I should take out the ChatGPT and just put AI or large language models. But so, and OpenAI even said this in a message to educators that verifying AI recommendations often requires a high degree of expertise. So just factoring in, we've got to have not just the time to auto-generate it, but to check it. Because these systems will fabricate, they will generate output with errors. And we've got to be able to evaluate what they give us. And the reminder there is that they will fabricate because they're fundamentally predictive algorithms. It's predictive text based on human text. They're guessing what would the humans write next. So they're not having a deep philosophical discussion with themselves about what is true, and they're not necessarily double checking, although there are some connections with search, but there's a statistical text prediction element that's in there with all of these systems. And so they might just come up with something that sounds good, but doesn't match reality. And checking for bias as well as inaccuracy. So because they are text prediction systems based on human text, they will replicate all the forms of bias that are in that human text. And we know that the internet is not exactly a representative and unbiased set of text. That's what they're trained on. So with all those caveats and ground rules, we might well ask, should we even be using these systems? And I just want to very upfront acknowledge and invite continuing wrestling with all the questions around AI ethics. And and including copyright, AI colonialism, labor concerns around the human labor that goes into making these systems, the environmental impact of them, and just refer you to a wonderful resource by Leon Furs, an Australian educator, teaching AI ethics. We've got to keep wrestling with this, and here we are. I am using these systems and sharing them with others, and upfront, it's because I'm fascinated. They are so useful and, to me, so powerful, in a way that's parallel to, say, internet search for me. This is something that is useful enough that it's going to become ubiquitous, and we need to understand it. I want to know what my students have access to. I want to know how the writing environment is changing for professionals. And those are the reasons I'm using it. And that said, I think that another reason why I feel comfortable using it is because I've had this shift from, using a system like this is a way to skip work, right? We've seen a lot of that rhetoric on concern around academic integrity, but we don't have to look at it that way. That's not the only paradigm. We can use it to help us think and to push our thinking rather than skipping thinking. So, and that's an approach I first saw articulated by Kyle Booten of the University of Connecticut at conversation through the organization Critical AI.
Anna, there
Yes.
was a couple points in the chat. So there was like someone saying, is it a hard no to use student work to grade based on,
Right.
pasting student grade because we don't want to post students' work? And then
Right.
someone was saying, is that always no or no unless your institution has enterprise access and there's data protection and so on, as long as someone human is going after what the AI does? What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think more and more as institutions are doing these kind of enterprise deals to have access to these systems from within an LMS or within institutional accounts with more privacy protections for student data, I would consider it. But I think it's good if we as faculty actually look at those policies and offer students an alternative, disclose if we are using AI with their work, or if we want to, and we are looking at the policies and part of those institutional conversations and offering students an alternative if they don't want to be evaluated by an AI system. This is something I'm still exploring, but I really look to Katie Conrad's Blueprint for an AI Bill of Rights for Education, which is a wonderful document that I will grab a link to in a minute. I'll put that in the chat. It's not letting
I'll
me.
do it, Anna. You keep going. I'll get the link.
Thanks. Okay. But yeah, I appreciate you raising that, because that's going to be even a bigger issue going forward. So continuing with that idea of we can use it to push our thinking, we can ask it to ask us questions. We can ask it for feedback. We can use it in these ways that we're not handing over control to it, but we are using it in our process and maintaining that control. Sorry, I'm having a little problem. It's not letting me move through my slides. This is very strange.
I think you're annotating. I think you
Oh,
need
is
to
that
close the
how
annotation.
do we get out of that? I didn't intend that. Sorry. Ah, this may work. There we go. Okay.
Oh, you're still annotating. Okay, can you
Still
stop sharing
annotating.
the screen? Stop sharing the screen and then reshare. That's the fastest way to do it.
Thank you. has never happened to me. I apologize.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
now you're sharing everything. Okay, good.
Yeah.
On track.
Okay. So some ways we might use it in our workflow that I'm going to show. So helping with the process of doing course outlines, lesson plans, rubrics, grant proposals, reports, so administrative work as well as curriculum planning. And let's look at what that might look like using it as a partner and how we work with this kind of system. I think the thing that I really like to emphasize is that people get stuck around the idea of needing to have a lot of technical expertise to be effective with these systems. You'll hear the phrase prompt engineering, and that just refers to essentially the rhetoric of how do you give instructions to these systems? What kinds of instructions do you give them to get the best results? And the beauty of it is that it's not coding. So many of the rhetorical skills that we have as educators go directly into this. And so many of the techniques are similar to what we might use even with students. So we consider scaffolding, we give some guidance, some steps along the way, some examples. So I think that the key really is to be bold and playful as we try things with these systems, not to be intimidated. So some of the techniques of prompt engineering that you can see given technical names are really these very simple rhetorical approaches that, might not seem obvious. It doesn't always feel like I have permission to do these things, but we do. So we might think that, it's about you give it instructions and then you take what it gives you, but no, you try again. You ask it for multiple responses and pick the best one, right? You can tell it what it got wrong, right? So it's not like, oh, it gave me this, I guess that's as good as ChatGPT can do, or that's as the best code can do. No, it's like you tell it, no, that's not what I want. Try again with this condition. Give it whatever you have to go on for your task. So whatever information, brainstorming, examples, description of the style, the format, template, will become part of what how it generates the answer. Taking it step by step through a process or asking it to explain its reasoning, right? A basic teaching skill, actually has been shown, it's been called chain of thought prompting, and it's been shown to lead to better results. Another way to think of it is that we're sort of the director and it's the actor. We can cast it in different roles, or tell it, try that again, but more friendly. We can explicitly tell it to play the role of, say, a coach or a mentor teacher or an administrator or an editor or a hostile student or an intimidated student, right? And see what it gives us. Another aspect of that is that studies have actually found that if you tell it to be unbiased, it does better than if you don't tell it that. That doesn't eliminate all bias, but that's another way to sort of direct it. Another approach that, two other things that I, for some reason, at first felt like I didn't have permission to do were, yeah, sorry, that was a bit out of, I guess I was thinking, say I have a situation with a student and I want to role play with one of these systems and try out different, prepare myself to talk with a student who is frustrated or experiencing, a mental health challenge. That's what I was referring to, Mark. So thanks for That was a little bit out of the blue, huh? So yeah, so we can also ask it to check its own output and critique what it has given us. And it will do that happily, as if, there were no inconsistency. And the other thing that comes from Wharton Business School professor Ethan Mollick that I thought was really neat is that when we don't know how to use it best, it sometimes will give good suggestions. So you can ask it, how can you help me to write a recommendation letter? What are the ways, right? Or what questions should I ask you so that you can help me write a recommendation? Or what information do you need so that I can do this task, right? And the system will yeah, thanks, Mark. Yeah, maybe that wasn't the best example for me to throw out there. Okay. And I think so. So again, we don't be too overwhelmed if you see directions for really complex, multi-layered prompts that give very detailed instructions. I've seen a lot of these kind of acronyms for all the things you should include in a prompt. And that's fine. It's good to have a reminder of all the things you can include. And Rob Lennon is sort of an influencer who has shared this very popular thread on how to prompt ChatGPT and many of the things I just mentioned, steps to complete the task, the context, the constraints, the goal, the format. To me, that's a little overwhelming. And it's nice to know those ideas are out there. And sometimes I do like to dip into some of these websites that I'm sharing that include strategies for prompting, prompt engineering, sample prompts, the one-page cheat sheet. It's kind of nice to see what people do. And I think there's been some kind of pushback on that on Twitter that I've really appreciated. So this comment from Alex Kerr, there's a lot of cognitive effort required to come up with a prompt when you're staring at a blank page. And this is probably the number one reason why not more folks are using ChatGPT or Poe.com or Claude or any of these other models. And so I think not getting stuck on having to put together this incredible document that is the prompt, right? But starting with something simple has actually been shown in recent research to be as effective and less overwhelming for the person using the system. So again, that Wharton professor Ethan Mollick has been saying that prompt engineering is going away, and he shared a paper where just a dialogue with one of these systems led to the same kinds of results as the user putting together a complicated prompt. So just an example of that, I'll often do that when I'm stuck with a task. I'll start with a really simple question like, is there any way this email could be improved? And then I give the system an email with, no private information in the email. And I didn't tell it how I want it to be improved or exactly what style or I didn't give it the whole context. Maybe it would have done a little better if I had, but what it gave me even without that was fairly useful. Not all of it, right? So it gave me 5 suggestions and one of them resonated. And that was useful and quick. So what does this look like in practice with, especially for writing and language teachers? I did a few experiments and I wanted to kind of share some of those with you and have you comment and reflect and see, what ideas come up as you think about how I was using it and how you might use it. So, okay. So I did 2 examples for language instruction, and I'm not a language teacher. So, that's the caveat. But this really applies to anything we're teaching that needs an explanation in this case. So if we're teaching, say, the example I did here was the subjunctive in Arabic. And, I might, as a teacher, think about how am I going to explain this? And yes, I can go and look up online different explanations, but having it in this dialogue format is a different kind of engagement. It's a different way to try it. And the language teachers will say, whether this is a decent response or not. And this is from po.com, so that is available in Egypt. And even more valuable, I would say, is quick generation of examples, and examples that could be tailored to topics of interest to students or to a course theme. So here I asked it to generate examples of sentences in Arabic that use the subjunctive correctly. And maybe students have just been talking about multiplayer online role-playing games, and so I asked them for sentences that relate to that. Nothing too fantastic, right? Nothing too surprising, but so quickly giving me those examples that relate to something that's already kind of something that's alive in the classroom as a topic. So yeah, the teachers will have to say if the examples are correct in Arabic, though. I know Maha has said that it's sort of uneven in Arabic.
Do you want one of the Arabic teachers to comment? We have a few in the
Sure.
session.
Sure, if
Iman or
they want
Raghda
to,
or Hiba or
now
Mona
or
or
later.
Azza. Does anyone want to say real quick? I don't know what subjunctive even means, so I'm not even going to comment.
Oh, okay. Right. It's like something that's not necessarily true, but that we want to be true or that we imagine could be true is how I would think of it. Yeah. From other languages.
Got
I
it.
don't know how different that is in Arabic, but
Yeah, so the sentences do that. It's true.
okay. Yeah. So that's one example, and feel free to comment, but I'm gonna walk you through a couple other examples. So one thing that I did was I said, okay, I haven't yet started planning my course for next semester, and that's probably not something I'm going to get to anytime soon, given everything else I'm doing, but let me just do this quickly with the language model and see what it gives me. Didn't go right to the same one. So let me show you ChatGPT first. So what I did was I just copied and pasted the official course outline for that course at my college. And as a thought experiment, I said, could you suggest 3 different approaches to structuring a plan for a sequence of assignments and readings? And let's see. It gave me 3 approaches, one with thematic units according to, one on race and culture, one on gender, and one that organized the literature course around genre. And then the third was the one I liked the most, which talked more about foundational concepts that built on each other. So close reading and analysis, and then moving to comparative analysis, and then critical perspectives. So it started suggesting readings. And so then in dialogue, I said, okay, I think the third approach fits me best. And here's the theme that I want to have for the course, artificial intelligence. And then I said, I was thinking to myself, where I'm really stuck is the sequence of steps here. And maybe it can help me with the process. So I asked it sort of for a to-do list. And I think it gave me a to-do list that was maybe too complete, so it got overwhelming, but it was helpful to see. it included, preparing lectures, thinking about multimedia, guest speakers, thinking about student engagement and student feedback and accessibility. I mean, this is all good reminders, I felt. Then I wanted to know reading list, right? So I thought, I have lots of ideas for short stories on AI, but I didn't have much knowledge of poetry on AI. So I asked it for examples by diverse writers. And I think what
people are asking about, sorry to interrupt, because this
oh,
question
go
kept
ahead.
coming up about,
Yeah,
people want to see your original prompt. I put the link to the thread, but can you just
sure.
show them again?
To go back to the original prompt for the whole thing. Okay. So I
Oh,
just said,
thanks.
here's the official course outline. Could you suggest approaches to structuring a plan for a sequence of assignments and readings? So I think what I'm doing in this chat session is I don't have one single objective. I'm experimenting with how it could help me around this general task of planning this course. And each thing that I ask it becomes the content part of the context for the next question. So there's kind of a synergy there. And I'm checking what it gives me. So when it suggested these poems and I looked them up, I actually found that some of these didn't exist. So the author existed, but I didn't find any poem by this title. I didn't spend a lot of time on this yet, but my sense from other experiments is that yes, it will often make up sources, plausible things, and it will also give real sources. So some of these I would guess would be real poems. Oh, very cool, Kim. Yeah, I've heard other people say these are good writers. These are good suggestions. So I'm gonna follow up on them. And then I asked it for even more specific, like a rough draft map of topics. I wasn't super happy with what it gave me. But, I kind of skipped along that. And then I said, how else could you help me plan my course? And so that was an example of that technique that I mentioned of, how can it help me? It can give me ideas. And I'm not going to do all these things, right? I want to keep ownership over my course. And I don't trust everything it's giving me, but it is getting me moving in some ways that that I probably wouldn't have felt that momentum around this course for another couple months. I wouldn't have sat down and engaged with all of those things on my own because it would have seemed like too much. Maybe I would have talked them through with a colleague though, and I don't want to give that up. So, okay. So another example, let's see, I asked it for ideas, again, I tend to use it where I'm getting stuck. So I had assigned a textbook reading on identifying assumptions. And yeah, somebody said it will suggest learning outcomes too. Definitely. That's a great use. So I wanted some examples to use in class of arguments I could ask students to identify the assumptions. And so I asked it to get me going on that. And it did give me, I actually, it's not showing the whole history here, but I actually uploaded the textbook section that students had read. And I asked it to give me examples of the concepts in that section. So it gave me examples of specific fallacies discussed in there, and it gave explanations of those. So between Poe and a ChatGPT session on the same topic, I did come up with a bunch of not only examples, but ideas for how to start the class activity. And again, it wasn't anything too surprising, but it was reminders of things that I maybe have done or hadn't thought about in this context. I liked the phrase of assumption hunt that it came up with, and dividing students into groups and having them find assumptions in specific arguments. Not rocket science, but yeah, I agree with Maha that it's definitely miscalculating how much time these things would take. And so there's this combination of kind of rolling my eyes at some of what I'm seeing and zeroing in on other things as, yes, that resonates. That's what I know from my experience to be valuable. And it did give me some pretty decent examples of each of the fallacies that I had assigned. And I ended up using maybe 70% of these and adapting them and disclosing that to students in class yesterday. So I think I probably wouldn't have come up with tailored examples of all those fallacies. On my own, it would have taken me a lot longer. Oh, good to know. Thank you, Iman, that the examples on the subjunctive were not accurate because they included conditionals. Okay. No, I appreciate knowing that. That's a little disappointing, but also a good caveat, right? So I noticed that as well with the examples of fallacies and the examples of assumptions. There were some cases where it didn't logically match what I was trying to teach. So I wouldn't set it loose as a tutor for those things, right? Because it's going to make those mistakes and confuse the students. But using it to develop my own materials where I have the experience to assess it makes a little more sense. Yeah, and again, dialogue. It was giving me examples that I thought were a bit boosterish and very positive on AI, and that's a tendency I've observed. When I ask it for anything related to AI, it's more on the positive side. So I explicitly asked it for examples where mistaken assumptions about AI could cause harm, and it did give me some. Okay. So, yeah. So other experiments that I did, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of peek at these and react on Mentimeter on a little poll that I've developed. But I'll show you really briefly and not go into as much detail. Yeah, and Marilyn is saying, will there be a trend where universities hire low-paid course facilitators who build shoddy courses based on AI? Possibly. I guess the lesson that I take away is that that critical perspective that has taken so much time and engagement with texts that doesn't involve AI to develop, for me, is what's valuable. That's how we bring something on top of beyond what it can give, and that continues to be valuable and essential. And we shouldn't overestimate what it can do just because it is sometimes sounds polished. Doesn't mean that it's actually a good lesson plan, right? So other examples, I asked it for a rubric on a critical analysis essay. That looks like this. I gave it, it's nice that you can upload files. You can do that on po.com and on the ChatGPT Premium and on Claude. So I just gave it a PDF of a rubric, and I asked it for something in a similar format for a different essay. And, it's convenient that it was able to generate a Word document that I then downloaded. And it was a pretty decent basic rubric. Nothing I would use directly, but a starting point and something that I could use in dialogue with what I already have. Yeah, I would agree Hoda, that it can't empathize with students. It can't react and respond in an agile way in relationship with students or a class, right? Yeah, it will read, some systems will read PDF. It can be glitchy with that, but you can upload PDF to Poe. I love the discussion about do people like it or not like it when it's sort of sycophantic and friendly and wishing us luck or saying, oh, sure, I can do that. I have mixed feelings about that too. Okay. And then the final example was using it as kind of a mentor teacher coach. I asked it explicitly to play the role of a mentor teacher and give me feedback on my assignment description for a research paper. I do think it's time for me to update this. And so I just pasted in that whole assignment text. And you know, I have to say, I like that it gave me the strengths first, effectively. I appreciated that. And, you know, and so times when we're needing encouragement, it is possible, and I have used it that way, just to say, you know, what's good about this? So it gave me some actually pretty useful feedback. Not all of it was good, but some of it I had already covered elsewhere. But like the first one was very good advice. I should have highlighted the connection between the research assignment and the previous 2 assignments and the skills we had built up from those assignments. Great advice. So then I asked it for a rubric. That wasn't quite as useful, but you know, it was decent. Yeah, thanks. AI detection tools, I know they're kind of a separate concern, but I'm definitely concerned about AI detection tools being biased and inaccurate. And in general, I'm a supporter of encouraging an ethic of transparency about when we use AI and when we don't, and helping students to do that. But I'm not sure detectors are the best way. But yeah, that's kind of an aside. So those are my kind of examples, and I wonder if people would be willing to share reactions to that, questions about how I used it, how I could have used it better, what I did, what I didn't do. I've created this poll. You can go to the link in the chat, and or you can go to menti.com. And from the slides, you can explore those chat sessions as well. So I'll give people a moment and then I will open that. Yeah, I would definitely not trust AI detectors. Even the companies will acknowledge that they're not fully accurate. One approach that I'm exploring is using sort of draft process tracking apps that where it'll show if there's copy paste, it'll show how much time the student has spent on the document, what revisions and changes they've made. And so that's an alternate approach to kind of academic integrity, alternate to detectors. Oh, thanks. Yeah, chat sessions. I just mean that when I start asking one of these systems like ChatGPT or Poe.com for things, that becomes its own little conversation. The chat session is like the conversation I'm having with it. And most of the systems allow me to create a link to that conversation after the fact. So it's sort of like its own little dynamic with its own history. I would caution with the detection systems also that there's a concern about privacy, and when we have the right to copy and paste student data, we probably just don't have the right to copy and paste student writing into lots of different detectors. Any system like that should be vetted through the institution and checked for privacy and how they're using that student data and all of that.
But the one with Turnitin already, the students are submitting their assignments there. It's just also one of the worst.
Yes.
All the detectors are bad, but it's also one of the worst ones, I think.
Right.
Someone is asking about the app that follows the drafting process. Was there one that you mentioned?
Yeah, there are a couple. So Chrome has some extensions to Google Docs. I'll put those in the chat. Revision history is one. That's pretty simple. There's I'm exploring an app called Rumi, Rumi Essay. Yes, the slides are definitely going to stay available after the webinar. And Draftback is another Chrome extension. Yeah. So just checking. If we try to teach something totally new, never taught before, what would it do? Hallucinate. Oh, I love that. I think that's an interesting experiment, and it would take whatever it can combine out of its training data and put it together in some form related to that new thing that we want to explore. And it might be interesting to see what it gives us. Certainly we shouldn't look to it as authoritative. We should look to our own purpose in introducing that new topic, right? Yeah. Wrapping my head around using images and PDFs. I can understand that. It's kind of a new step for me as well. On po.com, you can ask it for images. So you can ask it to generate images in there as well. Yeah, I love that the prompts have given me some ideas, but the nuance is left out. I would just say, just be aware that it does give somewhat better outputs when you're using a more advanced system. So if you're using GPT-4 or Claude 2, those are really the more advanced systems, and you can use those through po.com, but it costs. One way around that to try to get the more advanced system that will have a little more nuance is Bing, right? So Microsoft's Bing search has a chat that's based on GPT-4, the more advanced system. And that's still free. It's sort of limited in how much you can do, but worth exploring. Yeah, I like that point about as someone who struggles with executive functioning. I use it that way too sometimes when I'm just feeling disorganized, and it maybe can help organize my to-do steps. That was one of my examples. A way in which students can engage critically when it comes to editing their essays. Yes. And that's kind of a different workshop that I do, but I'll put in the chat. There's an app that I'm experimenting with, myessayfeedback.ai, that's developed by educators and is in sort of a free pilot version where they submit their essay and they get feedback, but it's not writing or rewriting the essay for them. And part of that app is encouraging them to question the feedback and to recognize when it's not matching their purpose. And I do think that's a really important part of both this process for us as teachers and for the students, is that constant sort of pushback and owning, this is still my thinking process. This is still my purpose. This is still a thing that I want to create in the world. And I need to know how I want to create it and why, and what's right and what's not. And the AI system doesn't know that. Right?
Rhythm shares his story with us now.
Anna, sorry, I muted all, so if you wanted to unmute
Right.
yourself.
Thank you. I was just about to do that. Okay. Drafting case studies and scenarios. Yeah, I love that use. I would definitely use it that way. And that we should promote the idea that AI tools are just an aid or an idea generator, and we should be guiding it. Yeah, I love sharing kind of my experiences working with the systems and where they messed up. Sharing that with students, I think, is helpful. Definitely, I would also revise whatever it gives me before I used it in class. Good for getting over writer's block. Yes, I just recommended it to my partner who's writing a novel and was really stuck. It was like, you might want to try this. Okay, great. Thank you for sharing these. I'll go back to my slides. A few other ways just to be aware of, and then we'll do some exploring on our own and sharing what we find. So administrative kind of departmental tasks, something I probably wouldn't have tackled was to compare the state course outline to my college's course outline for the same course, and to see you know, where there's a difference in approach. And it gave me some responses pretty quickly that were useful, that did match what I could see pretty readily in the outlines. I asked it if a particular email came across as friendly, and it was helpful kind of as a check, as a reader on my email. Yeah, I have heard about that. I haven't tried that yet. Thank you, Marilyn. If you get mid-semester feedback, you can put comments into ChatGPT and ask it to identify trends. I think that's interesting. Yeah, I would say to let the students know, or to ask for permission, of course, to submit their comments. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. We are running out of time, so I'll just quickly go through these. But asking it for wording suggestions. We kind of talked about using it for Bloom's taxonomy for learning objectives. Philippa Hardman has some great ideas for using it to kind of up our game as far as the learning design. Give it our feedback and say, how could I make this more positive? And then there are some research uses that I won't go into, but just to know that even on po.com, if you use the web search bot, you can ask it for something pretty contemporary. So I actually asked it to summarize the situation regarding aid to Gaza and the trucks. And I was kind of surprised that it was pretty accurate, and the sources that it chose, it actually linked to the sources in the news articles that were up to date. So you can use it in combination with search in these different apps. Other apps for that are illicit.org, Bing, Perplexity AI is a good one that doesn't require login. So I think that's, something we can use in a research process, always with the caveat that even if it's, finding real sources, it might not summarize them correctly. Yes, I think the recordings will be available. And I apologize that we're kind of ran out of time here. One more little, we do have 3 minutes. So I would say this may even be more useful than the curriculum uses for me, is sort of as a technical support, first place to go. Sometimes I get better suggestions on how to use particular apps like Google Slides or PowerPoint from one of these systems than I do just by an internet search. So here I asked for help with PowerPoint Designer. And here I asked for help with Google Sheets, finding how many non-zero, how many empty cells there were. And of course I could check those things. So that's really what I have for you. If you have the time and you'd like to share, I created this link to a document where we could share uses. And I just put one in there. So differences between ChatGPT and Poe, that's great. So Poe has many different bots available. And you can use ChatGPT through Poe. You can use OpenAI's GPT-4 through Poe. You can use Claude through Poe. So just to distinguish that. But I would say Claude 2 and the ChatGPT-4 are sort of comparable. Maybe GPT-4 is a little bit better on some things, but very comparable. I think Perplexity is available. I haven't heard that it's not available somewhere. So yeah, I hope people will share, and this could even be an ongoing document. Let me show it. So it looks like this, and it has links to all those tools at the top. And then you can just write directly in here if you want to share your name and something that you would want to use AI for as a teacher, and then what you've tried and how it went. And this could be really cool as a living document. We could comment on each other's, we could get ideas. I think that we're still just exploring this territory as teachers, and you know, rather than looking to experts who already know how to do this, we can I think the boldness and the playfulness and the curiosity and the critical perspective are really, you know, if we all kind of embrace that, we will figure this out together. And I'm excited to see what people put. And I'm also happy to get in touch. And feel free to email me, contact me through my website. And I hope to get to interact with more of you in an ongoing way. So thank you for coming. And thank you, Maha, for the feedback form.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Anna, would you have like 5 more minutes if there were questions that people wanted to ask?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. I think next time we need to give you like a 90-minute session.
That would be lovely. Yeah, I have a hard time
60 is never enough.
limiting the slides enough to create lots of time for experimentation. Yeah, 90 minutes would be great.
Yeah, I can send the chat to folks. I don't remember if I sent it last time. I remember I cleaned it up, but I don't remember if I sent it. Did anyone who come last time, does anybody know if we sent the chat on? We haven't sent the recording yet because we're still uploading it, but
Maha, Alia shared a really good document with all the links that were
she
shared.
always does that. She's awesome.
So that's good as the chat. Thank you, Alia, if you're still here. So we could send that if Fadia's okay with that.
She usually means to share. Yeah, here it is. I'll put it again for people who missed it. Yeah.
That's a doc that you can view and download if you want.
This is Alia's that I just posted now. She's our curator at Equity Unbound. That's what she does for us. She curates sessions. She does it anyway, so we called her that. Thank you, everyone, for the very, very active chat as well. And a lot of people were sharing useful resources. A lot of the resources are already on Anna's slides, so if you have Anna's slides, you'll find them, but there are a few other things that folks shared during the session. Anybody have any burning questions before you go?
If I may, I don't know, it's a problem with my age range. Well, it's a problem generally speaking, بس طبعا this week بالذات because it's this AI or this media literacy week with all the and this morning I was in Namely, and again there was this UNESCO forum of AI teaching, And by the way, I have so many links and so many presentations I'll share with you, Amaha, for if you'd like to, because and some of them are reports that are conducted by UNESCO. Yani, I feel a little inundated. I don't know. I feel like I'm very excited about AI. I'm very happy about learning. طبعا sometimes I feel I'm totally lost. It's totally lost. يعني اللي هو how would I get grasp of all of that all of a sudden? It's really and sometimes I feel overwhelmed. And what was surprising to me is that students as well are overwhelmed. Not for the technology, not for the AI concept, but for really not knowing how to operate using all these options that are there now. Where they're like starting to get a little bit concerned, especially in my media literacy classes, because all the time I'm letting them know, be aware, be skeptical, don't trust, and it's always things that just to because they're very trusting to this technology. They're very trusting to the fact that they're very trusting to the internet, basically speaking. This post-truth phenomena where they trust virtual information far more than real information is also an issue. When I come in, find myself overwhelming them the way I'm overwhelmed, I get concerned. And to visit everything of the sort, and all the time to see the pros and cons of Bing, of brand, of there's so many options.
Right.
And there's so many, I feel I'm sinking in, and sometimes I really feel that I want my paper and pen. And then again, I go, it's as much as I'm.
And I think they shouldn't have to use all of the things all of the time. And part of the message I want to send is that, in order to critically evaluate what these systems are giving us, we still need the kinds of critical thinking and reading and writing skills that we already know how to teach. And we need spaces where they're not using the tools, as well as times when they are. And, I'm trying to create like micro lessons and places, but also boundaries. And, acknowledge that too much is too much sometimes. And, I think like that's part of why I wanted to work on that essay feedback app, because it's a very specific purpose. It's one specific use of AI with some guardrails, with some instructor supervision, and it's limited to feedback. It's not all the different ways you could use these systems for writing. So I appreciate that call for like watching the overwhelm and scaling back and seeing when do we focus on this and when do we take a break and when do we teach the other skills that you still need. Even in order to work with it.
Yes, I make it very clear that for them, when I ask them, why are you here? Why are you seeking information, seeking as the knowledge? Why are you're here not for information? Because information is there, and it has been there ever since Google. It's not like it is something new, but this power of critical thinking, analyzing, and acquiring knowledge, not really information, because this is all the difference between just Googling a word or a concept or an idea and know about it, ABCs, and really be able to process it and internalize it and have this kind of building on it. So for that they're here, and they realize that they are here not because of the information, but because of the knowledge that they only acquire by discussions and by being able to use different tools of education. It's not the students. It's me being all of a sudden, perhaps I dipped too deep, too fast. Perhaps it's only me, and it's not your session, Khalis. It's the fact that I've been attending so many AI sessions that I miss a non-AI talk. That's the whole idea. I enjoyed yours very much, and it's very specified, and it's always lovely being here. Don't get me wrong, wallahi, but it's just I just wanted to get out of my system that is it's a little bit overwhelming.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's helpful just to acknowledge that and watch that, our own reactions with that. And,
It helps very true.
Mervat, come to Serenity
and these
Sundays
tools
on
are gonna-
Sunday. No AI.
right,
Oh,
right. Yeah. Or Friday, Saturday, or whatever. Yeah. Have a day of a break from it.
Thank
Yeah, I
you
go to
very
my
much,
garden
Brigad.
for that.
Thank you very, very much. It's always lovely being here, Brigad. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
I have a question, Anna. I'm not sure if I got what you said right about dangers or threats to our students when they use AI. Did I get that right? Yani, but if they use AI, there might be some danger or something they should watch out for, or beside revealing their identity or any information they wouldn't want to share with anyone. Is there anything else? Because I've been encouraging my students to use AI, and I would hate to, be doing something that would put them in any.
Your students are all
difficult.
adults, right? They're all teachers. That's important
Oh,
to
yes,
note
they
as
are.
well.
Yes, definitely.
I mean, I think that, the concerns that I have with my students are around, are they going to take it as more authoritative than it really is? Are they going to trust it too much? Are they going to notice the inaccuracies or the bias? And so that's why, I would foreground practicing finding those things and practicing developing their own self-confidence around being able to say, it told me this, but no, that's not right. Or that's not what I wanted to say, or that represents a very, a very white perspective, or so I didn't mean some like imminent specific danger like to their persons or anything like that. I think that I did use an example where I was asking about possible harms of AI more generally. And that was things like, a system that diagnoses medical conditions and maybe it makes a mistake, or a self-driving car that goes, that gets in an accident, right? So AI more generally, there are various risks and concerns to think about. But with students, I would say, I don't know if others want to jump in, but for me, that's the concern, is that they would they would become enamored because they're just getting used to academic. At least my students are usually first-year students, and they're finding their voices in an academic setting. And they're sometimes very impressed by academic style. And since these systems are very good at reproducing style, and kind of a smooth, no grammar errors, standard English, fancy vocabulary, I don't want students to see that and think, oh, that's good, and it's good at that, and I'm not, right? Because often those sentences that it generates are maybe a little bit empty, or I don't want the students to be overly impressed by that.
Yes, sure, definitely. Yeah, thank you very much.
I had them discover the.
Thank you very much for a wonderful session. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to stop the recording and say thank you very much. And then maybe some people are shy and they'll say something as soon as we stop the recording. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you,
everyone, for joining.
Such an interactive session.